Hi, my name is Dr. Kim Byrd-Rider, and I'm a physical therapist and a psychologist. And I'm here today for Well World TV, where I have a channel on there called Byrd-Rider Utopian Healthcare. And on that channel, we do interviews, and we also have patient DVDs, home exercise programs for medical grade yoga is on there. And it's also an education platform for healthcare professionals, personal trainers, and exercise specialists. But today I am interviewing a really great guy from the California Institute of Human Science, and he is the Dean of Academics there, and we're going to talk about education today. So welcome, Dr. William Howe. It's nice to see you here today.
Great to be with you, Kim. Thank you for having me. I'm pleased to be able to talk about education and where we're going with education.
Where are we going with education?
Well, I think education has been, in higher education anyway, has been fractured. I always refer to it as Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall in higher ed and he fell, and it's all broken now into disciplines and knowledge domains that may not be right to begin with. And we don't really look at the whole student either. We tend to focus on the mind and we exclude the heart and the spirit. So we don't look at the whole person. We're not integrating different disciplines. One discipline doesn't talk to another. One knowledge domain doesn't talk to another. We don't integrate the university and the community. We don't integrate theory and practice. So it's all fractured and broken up. I like what one novelist said. He said, "Only connect, live in fragments no longer." And E.M. Forster it was who said that. And I believe in that wholeheartedly. I believe in connecting things up. I think that gives meaning to life. So I'm all about connecting up different disciplines, different ways of thinking about phenomena, connecting theory and practice, university and community, looking at the whole student, the head, the heart, the spirit, the moral, intellectual, or the moral, ethical side of growth, and educating the whole person. And so I would, if I had the money, I would start my own university. And it would be called the University for Human Well-Being. And it would look at the whole person and how we can grow as whole people. Because I think today we need to focus on who we are. What's our purpose here on the planet? Why are we here? Rather than studying a specific discipline, I think it's equally important to discover who we are, why we're here, what brings meaning to our lives, how we can relate to other people well, how we can live peacefully together with different cultures and different people, and how we can make the planet survive. Because the planet is in trouble in many ways. We've got to address that. We've got to figure out why we're here. That's the big question. But instead, higher ed looks at studying psychology or studying philosophy or studying computer science, all in isolation often from each other, rather than trying to integrate. I'm all about integrating, connecting, and bringing the pieces back together again.
Now, how would you do that? How is your plan different than normal universities? How would you go about knitting all of those things together for people?
Well, again, ideally, if I had my own university, I would design it from the beginning so it wouldn't be embedded in the old ways of thinking, which are fragmented. And I think we've become institutionalized in that fragmented model. But I'm currently serving at California Institute for Human Science, which, in my opinion, does a wonderful job of trying to put it all back together. We look at California Institute for Human Science, we look at the whole person, that is the mind, the body, and the spirit, and how they're all connected. And this particular learning institution was founded by Dr. Motoyama of Japan, and he had a vision of bringing mind, body, and spirit back together again, and of integrating science and spirituality. Now, we believe in empirical science. We really know how important that is. So we value physics and we value the other sciences. But we also value new things that are quite cutting edge and a good deal of the world is finally catching on to, and that is subtle energy and how we are more than just our physical bodies, perhaps. And so we're looking at that, and we're looking at how to measure that scientifically, and how medicine and healing practices can move forward with this new kind of science. Our president, Thomas Brophy, was an astrophysicist, and now he found his way, actually from an early age, he found his way to integrating science and spirituality, or science and consciousness. And he's a remarkable man, so we're fortunate to have a leader like that at the head of our institution. And I firmly believe in bringing it all together, too, for the healing and the betterment of individual people and of collective people and of the planet. My background is in leadership studies. I was a leadership educator, teacher, researcher, practitioner for 35 years. And I finally came to the realization that leadership has to be about collaboration, about people working together, about relationships, about shared responsibility, about mutuality, not about the one person above other people leading or the person out in front of leading. We all have to work together. And in fact, about a month ago, I wrote an article called "Leadership is Dead?" With the idea that I was jettisoning my own field that I had been working in for decades, because I think the words leader and leadership get in the way of human interaction. I think it's about collaboration and relationship, not about drawing other people along as an individual leader. So I'm all about collaboration and working together. I'm a very student-oriented educator. I believe in working closely with the students. Today, for example, I had an hour-long conversation with a student who was unhappy with his grade on a course. And I worked with that student over the hour and tried to convince him to let the grade go. There are more important things in life than that grade, that I would support him and work with him, and we at the Institute would work with him and support him moving forward so that he can have a good education and a good, meaningful life ahead, and not let that one bump in the road get in the way.
So to make a complete education, or to build an education that is holistic, is the key to that doing different courses in the different categories? Like you were talking about the science categories and the curriculum in science, and then the curriculum more in the holistic areas. Is that your approach to the student, where they integrate both types of courses into their total curriculum? Or is it the staff integration or the integration of the students with one another, or just the approach?
It's a great question, Kim. Thank you for that. I guess I would suggest that, first of all, you have to have an institute that's based upon principles of melding science with spirituality or consciousness. You have to be founded on that, and that has to be the principles by which you operate and your mission. And you have to develop that into your institutional learning outcomes, and that has to feed down into your program learning outcomes and into your course learning outcomes, so that you have a seamless educational system that goes all the way from your guiding mission down to the classroom and the individual assignments. Then I would suggest you have to hire faculty who are attuned to that vision and that mission. That is, people who really want to bring spirituality and consciousness together with hard science. And they want to bring them together for the betterment of the students and for the betterment of the world. And that it's not an easy task to find people like that. But more and more, there are people emerging who want a larger vision of life and of who we are, and who think that we are spiritual beings and not just bodies. And so we're trying to hire and cultivate people who believe in intellectual education, emotional education, moral, ethical education, physical education, and spiritual education. And bringing that all together, there are people out there, and we have had many at the university for many years. So we're delighted to have them, and we want to keep them on. And we're seeking more. Then I think you attract a student base, students who come to you who have that in mind from the beginning. They want that. They're hungry for that today. They want something more than being steeped in a given discipline. They want to think interdisciplinarily. They want to know how to meld the different parts of the human being, how to put together mind, body, and spirit. So then you have to develop a curriculum and keep that curriculum going that really tries to put it all together. You don't have science classes and consciousness classes. You have them in one class across the board and across the whole curriculum. So that's what we're trying to do, is cultivate faculty and students and curriculum that are all in sync with that vision of melding consciousness and science.
How many universities do you think are doing this?
I think there are others that are doing it. There are some Buddhist-related universities, Naropa, for example. I think they're based in Colorado. They're doing a wonderful job with a more holistic kind of education. And there are other institutes. There's one in Maryland now, I think, that is very holistic. I've forgotten the name of it. But not many. Frankly, I come from traditional education, working at institutions like the University of California at San Diego, the University of San Diego, educated at Stanford and Harvard. So I've been affiliated with traditional research universities. And I'm eager to bring this larger vision now to those kinds of universities, to making the curriculum more holistic and to assessing students as holistic beings. Most institutions today assess students just on the intellectual content. What did they get out of the course? How much do they remember? Can they regurgitate all that content back in a paper or on an exam? But how did they grow as people? How did their heart evolve? And I'm thinking now, for example, of the work of Daniel Goleman on emotional intelligence. So how did they grow emotionally? And there are various dimensions upon which you can grow emotionally. You can grow in terms of self-knowledge, in terms of how you relate to other people, in terms of how well you know who you are as a whole being, in terms of empathy and compassion. So how do we measure those kinds of things? And then how do you grow spiritually, for example? How do I relate to something beyond my own skin? What's my purpose here? And all students should be asking those kinds of questions. Not just, will this education get me lucrative work that will support me for the rest of my life, but will it make me a happier, more meaningful, satisfied person in life? I'm also very interested in the work of Howard Gardner at Harvard on multiple intelligences. That is, looking at people as having interpersonal intelligence, how we get along with other people, intrapersonal, how well we know ourselves, natural intelligence, how we relate to the natural world, spatial intelligence, how well we relate with the space around us. Can we paint? Can we see? Can we photograph? Musical intelligence. Mozart clearly was a genius in that regard. And some people are very attuned to one kind of intelligence, but maybe we need to cultivate all those kinds of intelligence within each human being so that we're more whole, rather than just the traditional linguistic, mathematical intelligence that we get in most universities. And I think we've got to learn how to assess students on all these different dimensions, not just giving a grade for what they got on the content of the course, but How did their heart grow? How did their spirit grow? Did they become more self-aware beings during the course? And that's a very difficult thing to do because in general, we haven't done that in higher education. So I'm highly interested in taking the institution that I work at now, California Institute for Human Science, and putting it on the cutting edge of a new kind of curriculum and a new kind of assessment of students as whole people, and then bringing that out to the larger world of higher education and of education at large. It's a tough task because higher ed is embedded in many traditional ways of operating, and getting them to give that up and let that go will
A
be
lot
a
like
very
that
difficult.
student you just had.
Yeah, exactly. Letting go, as we
Can't let
all
it go
know,
of the
is
bee.
very difficult to let things go in life once we're attached to them. And
Well, now would
Buddhism
the
is, yeah.
assessment be done by the student themselves, like a pre and post assessment of if they've grown, or would the assessment be done by the instructor? Because then you're into subjective territory as opposed to objective territory. And then the student goes, well, they didn't grade me, accurately. They don't like me. You know how that goes.
Well, that's a good question, Kim, and I appreciate that. And I'll say that the response I'm going to give you coincides with what I'm talking about in terms of holism. And that is, I think assessment should be done by the instructor, by the student, him or herself, and by peers, for example, in a classroom or those with whom you're interacting. For example, I'm very keen right now on people that I work with being assessed by those who are, quote, above them. I don't like using that hierarchical language. And by those who are, quote, below them, students or whatever they may be, and by their colleagues. So you get 360-degree assessment. I would always want to be assessed that way by my supervisor, the president of the university, by the faculty whom I supervise, by my colleagues, my fellow administrators, and by the students. I see the students as the bullseye on the target. Everything should revolve around them, and they should be evaluating me, and I should be there to serve them and to give to them and to share with them, not to just be a rule setter and a rule regulator. So I'm very interested in a more holistic kind of assessment of myself and of all of those with whom I work.
Well, now, how would admissions change? How do you admit students if you're not just doing it academically? What other criteria goes in there?
Well, that's a good question, too. I think we're fortunate at California Institute for Human Science to have students who self-select. They come to us because they know we're different. They know we're about the whole person. They know we have a different kind of curriculum that tries to bring together consciousness and science, that tries to bring together things that in many ways are on the cutting edge. Medicine is moving toward alternative medical practices now that really are looking at auras and looking at things in a new way that get outside of what the American Medical Association and other people have long said medicine should be. So we're incorporating, sorry, go ahead, Kim.
The pharmaceuticals.
Yeah. So we're really looking at Eastern medicine and Western medicine and bringing those together. You know, when I taught leadership, the favorite text that I used was the Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. It's a wonderful, wonderful book about how we all need to work together and about group mind rather than about the individual leader. That epitomizes in many ways who I am and how I come at education. We all work together. We've proven now, by the way, that students learn more from each other than they do from the instructor. So that's a valuable bit of insight right there. They need to communicate with each other, interact, dialogue, and learn from each other. I had to evaluate a class about a month ago, and I went in and the whole class was nothing but a lecture the entire time. And I had to meet with that instructor later and say, you need to let that student open up and engage with you. You need to learn from that student even while he learns from you. And you need to dialogue and learn from each other. So that's really what I'm all about, is people learning from each other.
And you believe that CIHS is doing a good job of this, or are there more things you're working on?
I believe we're doing a good job at it. I believe, however, that our assessment system has a long way to go yet. We are still largely assessing students on what they learn from the content of a course. That is, if they take a class in psychology, what are they learning about the psychology, somatic psychology? And at the end, they have a final exam where they have to show what they've learned. How did they grow in that course? How did their heart grow? How did they change? How did their spirit grow? How did they grow as a more morally attuned, ethically attuned, other-oriented human being? How did they learn to live more in the moment and be grateful for everything they have in life? How did they develop an other orientation, so they're oriented to other people more than they were at the beginning of the course? Those are the kinds of things that I'm interested in. But I'm struggling against the whole industry of higher ed and the whole industry of America. You know, many years ago, there was a book that came out called Schooling for a Capitalist Society. It argued that we're largely churning out widgets for the economy. And I'm very sympathetic to that perspective. Now, I want our economy to prosper. I want America to prosper. But at the same time, I want people to explore who they are and to become more self-fulfilled people, rather than just go to school and put up with it for a few years and come out with a diploma that will help them get a job. I think that's shortchanging yourself and your life. I think you ought to seek more than just a diploma that gets you a job. Schooling should be more than a means to an end. The whole journey should be a worthwhile experience. And I hope that's what students get at CIHS.
What do the graduates have to say about their degree when they're finished?
Well, that's a good question too. You ask great questions, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we did an alumni survey about a month ago. And the feedback we got was that our alumni want to come back and be more engaged with CIHS. That is, they want to be involved because they loved it there. They loved growing and transforming and becoming more whole human beings. So now they want to come back and they want to give to CIHS. And we're delighted that they want to do that. So we need to involve them and get them back into our classes, maybe as guest speakers, or maybe they can come back and teach a whole class or a portion of a class. So we're eager to get our alumni back connected with the university. You shouldn't just let your alumni go out into the world. Keep them involved in the process. Keep them connected as well. Not only university and community, but university and alumni. So I'm glad you asked that question.
So this isn't just a degree, you stay in touch, it's a family.
Absolutely. The family metaphor is a good one. It goes way back in education. You know, we have many metaphors that we use to talk about schooling in America and around the world. In Germany, they used kindergarten, which meant a garden of children, a garden. Flowers grow there. What a wonderful natural metaphor. Some people have written books about schools as prisons. If you look at many schools in America, they have
into those.
guard yards with a fence going all the way around. And given the kind of security that we demand today, you often have to walk through a turnstile into the school grounds. What kind of a message does that send to students? That you have to be guarded and it's a protected environment. I can remember being in grade school and looking out at the fence around the school and thinking, those cars that are going by on the other side, one day I'm going to be out there. I'm going to be free of this environment. I'm going to escape here.
I think we all felt that way. You must be reading my mind. I definitely felt that. If I could just get to the other side of that fence.
Right. And I think many, many students feel that way. So wouldn't it be wonderful if our schools could be gardens and places where students want to be? I think there's only one grade school that I've ever been to in my life, and I visited many because I wanted to know how they work. There was one up in Palo Alto that I visited where the students said they would rather be there than be home or off with their friends in another location. They really loved the school. But most of the schools I went to, students would say, I would rather be home
Mm,
or off in another place with my friends.
mhm.
School was not where they wanted to be. And school should be where you want to be, where it's fun and enjoyable, and you're learning about who you are, not just content being given to you and crammed down your throat. Excuse me.
I regurgitate
So
back.
I'm very much for that model of schooling as a garden, as a place where students want to be, not a prison, not somewhere where you have to escape from.
Well, I feel very honored to be part of your staff. I'm now teaching the anatomy and physiology course for you. And it's been a delight dealing with everyone on, I shouldn't even say dealing, because you don't have to deal with anyone on the staff. Everyone is helpful. They behaved exactly like you're talking about, in more of a family manner, more of a how can I help you kind of a situation. Is there anything else that you want to talk about to maybe prospective students?
No, I think we've covered a lot of bases. Kim, we're very delighted that you're coming aboard. You'll be teaching the anatomy and physiology, and we would like to get you involved in other courses as well. I know you're going to be a great contributor to CIHS, and excuse me, we know that you have the kind of mindset that will work well with our integral vision of education. Our words are connectivity, integration, and collaboration. That's what we're all about. That's where we want to take higher education. And we know you're a part of that, so thank you for coming on board.
Oh, well, I'm honored, and I've been part of the education system as well as you. I've been in Boston University, University of Oklahoma, Harvard University too. We've both been through the university system and through the degree system, and it's fantastic. But it is missing some major players that you discussed today. So I'm really, it's refreshing to see a university that's willing to take on those more abstract ideas, and even those are ideas that haven't been discovered yet. Like, we know physics, we know at anatomy, what I'm teaching, but for you, I, it's not going to change. Anatomy is going to be the same today as it was 10 years ago, as it will be in the next 10 years, or pretty close. And but a lot of the topics that you are opening the door to are undiscovered. It's like, you know, being a physicist on the brink of discovery, and it's refreshing and exciting and new. And I'm sure tons of people want to be part of that as they watch the world change into a
Well,
more.
thank you, Kim. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And I agree. And ironically, many of the people who've been on this planet for a long while, sorry, the Native Americans, for example,
Mhm.
and other peoples around the planet have long known that an integral vision of life is the way to the most meaningful, satisfying, happy life. And we've fragmented now, and we need to get back to that more integrated vision.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I
You know, I
agree.
look at surgery. I think, and surgery is so important, and we really need it. But when the surgeons came through and they broke everything down into pieces, which they had to do. If you're going to do surgery on the gallbladder, you better know the gallbladder, and you better know what it attaches to. And I want you to be good at removing gallbladders, or heart surgery. Same thing. I want you to be really good at that specific organ. And so in their field, they had to segregate things. They had to get specific. But what's happened is the rest of us did the same thing. And we don't really have to segregate and isolate our education like a heart surgeon has to. We don't have to replicate that model. It shouldn't be replicated. So it's, but we did. And it's really nice to see you and CIHS piecing those back together and showing us that it's not just about one organ. It's not just about your brain or what really, it's not your brain that we have been um, looking at. It's your memory. How good is your memory? Oh, well, if you have a fantastic memory, you're going to do well on this test. If your memory isn't so great, but you integrated all of the information and you actually use it in the world, that's not tested. And your memory isn't the most valuable piece of your anatomy. And it's really nice to see that people are branching away from that. I really respect what you all are doing.
Yeah, I had a professor at Stanford who said, if you don't have a liver, you can't live and you can't think. You won't be around.
Yeah.
So it's all important. The whole body, as you well know, works together. You know, in America, we've been reared on the idea of rugged individualism. Ralph Waldo Emerson, I believe, used that phrase. And I have great respect for Emerson, but the whole idea of rugged individualism is anathema to what I'm suggesting here, that we all need to work together. We all need to collaborate. We cannot just be rugged individualists anymore. Americans need to come together. The whole world needs to come together.
What a beautiful statement. We're going to end on that. I so appreciate you coming today and sharing this information with us, and hopefully we'll share it with the world so that more people can know.
Thank you, Kim. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great
We'll be
day.
in touch.
Yes.